Hello everyone, I hope you all are doing fine. So we started our discussion in chapter 10, grade 6 CBSE, New Empires and Kingdoms. And in the last topics, last sessions, we covered Prashasti, Samudragupta's Prashasti, genealogies, and we were talking about Harshvardhan and Harshacharita. So I talked about Harshvardhan being the Indian emperor who ruled North India. He was the son of Prabhakar Vardhan. He had another brother whose name was Rajyavardhan, who ruled Thaneswar. In case you guys have missed, please watch the replay. And even I talked about Harshacharita. What is that? So as I explained that this person, Harsha, he ruled this area. I'll show you on map right here. And I told that he also controlled the present day Thaneswar, which is in Haryana, at the very bank of Saraswati River. So let's say exactly here we've got somewhere in Haryana, Thaneswar, which was originally ruled by his brother Rajyavardhan. And then after that, he also controlled Kannauj, which was ruled by his brother-in-law. His brother-in-law was defeated by a ruler of Bengal, and then he started to rule Kannauj, which is the present-day Uttar Pradesh. He was successful in conquering part of Magadha Empire right here. However, he tried to cross Narmada. As he tried to cross this river right here, as you can see Narmada, and he wanted to go further south into the Deccan Plateau, but he was stopped. He was controlled, his power was controlled by another ruler whom we study, the Chalukya rulers, and also the Palwas. So Chalukya's most important ruler was Pulkasin, and I'll talk about him in some time, Pulkasin II. He stopped and controlled, Harshvardhan's power, and he didn't allow him to enter south. That brings us to the next topic, and we are going to talk about the Palwas, Chalukyas, and Pulkasin. Prashasti. So as I told you, Pulkasin was very, very influential, and he was one of the most important kings when I talk of Chalukya dynasty. And we'll also see how we learn about Palwas. So this area, as you can see, Chalukyas, they declared their capital as Aihole, very near to Krishna River and one of its tributary, Tungabhadra. So here exactly we have this area, Aihole, which is Raichur Doab. Okay? And here I talk of another set of kingdom, that is Cholas are there, and you can see Palwas. So these Palwas also have their capital. Here you can clearly see Palwas controlling Kanchipuram, very near to this Kaveri River. So both of them, they wanted to check each other's power. The Chalukyas wanted to control Palwas section. Palwas wanted to control Chalukyas area. That means Palwas controlled Kanchipuram, very near at the capital very near to Kaveri Delta. And these Chalukyas that you see here on this map, it is very near between Krishna River and one of its tributaries, Tungabhadra. So this area, as I told you, this is Raichur Doab. Doab basically means, guys, it is the place between two rivers. For example, we say Panch-Ab, which means a place that is covered by 5 rivers. But Doab means 2 rivers, that area that falls between 2 rivers. And this Aihole was an important trading center. We find a lot of temples here. And everybody wanted to control this area, this place in Karnataka. Everyone wanted to have a control because we see a lot of temples, we see religious center here. And Palwas raided Chalukyas. Chalukyas in return raided Palwas. I'll highlight it for you. Here we've got Chalukyas, here we've got Palwas. Though they started to raid each other's capital to control more and more areas. One of the most important Chalukyas, if you look at the map, you'll remember it. His name was Pulkasin II. We get to know about him, Pulkasin II, from his court poet. Again, because I told you they used to write a lot of Prashastis. So his court poet is Ravi Kirti. He talked about Pulkasin's ancestors, about how the generation passed on from one person to another and how Pulka Sin inherited the kingdom not from his father, right? But he got it from his uncle. And this person again wanted to become very, very powerful like other kings. So he also started to invade some of the places towards the east, further east here, further north here. So he wanted to have more and more areas. And what happened is he also checked Pulka Sin here. He also checked the entry of Harsha. He didn't want Harsha to control the south, because otherwise he would be left out of power. He'll be thrown out of power. And Ravi Kirti also talks about the defeat. And there was a war that was also fought. Harsha basically means happiness. So the poet wants to say that after the defeat, Harsha was no longer happy. There was a fight that went on, but after that, Harsha was defeated. So it was Pulka Sin versus Harsha. And Harsha was no more happy because he was defeated by the famous emperor of Chalukya's time, whose name was Pulka Sin. And then Pulka Sin also attacked the Palava's king, who went and took shelter right here in their capital behind the huge walls. That's Kanchipuram. So that means Pulka Sin was the hero of our story. He not only defeated Harsha in one of the important wars, and he also managed to defeat Pallavas and proved his triumph. Wow, Pulka Sin the Great. A battle fought and won. That means wow. Just wow, hai na? Chalo. Now I'm going to talk more about Rashtrakutas in the next class, but also we've learned a bit about Cholas in the previous session, so please go and check out the previous videos. Now it brings us to the next topic, that how were these kingdoms administered? There might be some way to administer these kingdoms because land revenue had become a very important source to tax people, and that is the best way these rulers could run the empire. But in order to administer, in order to control the entire kingdom, they divided it into small villages. Like we divide the entire nation into small states. Similarly, the entire kingdom was divided into small villages, and that became very easy to be administered. But the kings were quite intelligent back then. They always were on a hunt to choose and take support of the influential men who could control that area and help them earn some source of revenue. Chalo. So I'll get started with some of the most important posts that were back then. And these posts, the first I'm going to start was hereditary post. That means it goes off from the father. Once he's done, it goes to the son. Okay? So do you remember I talked about Harisena at the time of Samudragupta? Yes, you can call it Harisena or Sena. He was not only a poet, but he was also given the title of Mahadanda, Danda karne wala Nayaka. So remember, Danda kaun karta? It's judiciary. So he was given the title of Chief Judicial Magistrate because his father also held the same post. Like his father, he was also declared the Chief Judicial Magistrate. So he used to control some area as the Chief Judicial Magistrate. Apart from that, the second important post is the same person having many portfolios, controlling many departments, controlling many ministries. Talk of Harisena. Let's say this person is Harisena. He not only was declared as Chief Judicial Magistrate, that is Maha Danda Nayaka, but to your surprise, he was also declared as Kumar Amatya. Now, what do you understand by Kumar Amatya? That means a very, very important minister. Of course, he needs to be important. He wrote a lot of prashastis with respect to the king. Then the third important post that he was declared was Sandhi Vigrahika. Now, what is Sandhi? Sandhi, you guys can learn. as you fight with someone and then sandhi, 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 that means come, we'll have a treaty, we won't fight any further, something of that sort. So he was the Minister of War and Peace. That means at the same time, he held so many influential posts. Isn't that quite surprising? The same minister, he was a poet, right? And he was a Sanskrit poet who held so many important posts at the time of Gupta. So he was an important poet at the time of Gupta dynasty, or at the time when Guptas were ruling, especially Samudra Gupta. So this is the same person who talks about the bravery of Samudragupta and has written about it, and described about it, inscribed it on the Allahabad pillar. Chalo, let's move on to the third important and influential post. So some people had quite a say in the local administration. For example, I'll give you some of the important names. Nagara Shreshti. Now, who's this Nagara Shreshti post? It means you can say the chief banker. Nagar ke chief banker, Shreshti. Or you can say consider him as the merchant of city. Right? So this is one of the important posts. The second post related to the same is Satavaha. Satavaha, which means the leader of merchant group. Now you've already learned about caravans. Caravans means the group when the people move together. Or you can say Prathama Kulika, which means the chief craftsman. He was the chief craftsman. Or there's another post that is head of Kayasthas, which means scribes, the people who write something beautiful, who've got good talent when it comes to calligraphy. So these were some of the influential people at the time of different kings who started to achieve position, power in the kingdom. And yes, these were quite successful back then, and some of them, they were strong enough. For example, tomorrow if this person comes up and says, I am the chief craftsman, I control all the crafts workers, so I can have a different empire, a separate empire as compared to what the king is doing with us. So yes, there were some people who were dabang enough and who said, oh, excuse me, king, it's high time. Sorry. We need to have a separate kingdom from now. And the king would look up to them. Excuse me, what are you saying? No. Actually, we control the craftsmen. So now it's time to say bye. And yes, guys, it's also time to say bye to you guys. In case you guys like the session, please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. I'll talk about the new kind of army in the next class. But for that, please stay tuned. Thank you.